Hello again. Yet another, I think, very exciting episode session of In Conservation with. But for those who are new to In Conservation, it's a series of Zoom interviews in which I talk to some of the movers and shakers within the world of conservation. And it could be anything from birds all the way through to the rocks they stand on, everything in between. So insects, plants, I've had so many different guests. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And my YouTube channel, in case you are watching it but not realizing what channel you're on, it should be the Urban Birder channel on YouTube. So like and subscribe, tell all your friends. And I often say to people, tell your enemies as well, because sometimes it could turn them around and make them nice people. So that's my thinking. I have some wonderful guests today, as I mentioned. But firstly, I must say that In Conservation With is sponsored by Cower Sporting Optics, the manufacturer of the world-renowned Promenade series spotting scopes, as well as Birds, Wildlife, and Nature, the tour company that strives to deliver the best of birding and wildlife opportunities throughout the world. So thank you guys for the sponsorship. Now, I'm going to talk with Nils and Mark, who have produced an amazing field guide. It's a guide that basically is, I don't know, it's rocking the world at the moment. Um, but let me just quickly tell you about these people. Nils van Duivendijk, which I hope is the correct way of pronouncing your name. I've been practicing for the last 10 minutes. Normally I'd sort of practice all night, but I didn't have time last night. So 10 minutes, but I got Nils right anyway. He's an ornithologist who contributes regularly to the venerable Dutch Birding Magazine and other premier European birding journals. His books include Advanced Bird ID, the Western Palearctic, and of course, published this summer, the widely acclaimed ID Handbook of European Birds, which is what we're talking about tonight, the landmark two-volume photo identification set of the birds of Europe in every identifiable plumage. A mean feat, I tell you. Well, actually, no mean feat. A project that took over 7 years to complete, in which Nils describes all the necessary ID features of all the field recognizable plumages of 733 European bird species. That's incredible. I'm glad I got his phone number, I'll tell you, because I see so many birds I don't recognize. So, Niels, I'm sorry, I'm going to be bugging you now. When not birding in his beloved Wadden Island in Wieland, Netherlands, or working as a pulmonary function analyst in a hospital, Nils can be found riding his racing bike in between long hours of working on the third volume of the ID handbook, this time describing the rest of the species found in the Western Palearctic. I think he's got his work cut out for the rest of his life. Um, and with Nils is Mark, a good friend of mine, Marc. Right? And I've practiced his name for a long time. Mark is a birder and a bird photographer as well. You do take pictures of wildlife as well, don't you? With a keen interest in photographing seabirds, seeing the most skulking birds on the planet. Um, he is the founder and director of Agami Photo Agency, a Dutch-based stock agency specializing in birds and nature images. He also writes a blog for BirdLife Netherlands about his travel experiences in his quest to see and photograph the birds in the world, and is co-founder of the Texel Big Day, which I need to come to one day, a 24-hour big day bird race by bike for conservation on Texel in the Netherlands. He's the initiator of the ID Handbook of European Birds, of course, authored by Nils, and responsible for collating the 5,500 images in the book, mostly sourced from Agami photographers and many photographed especially for the project. And I know he did this. I can actually vouch for him now because he spent 2 weeks in my house in Spain working on it. In fact, I just had to leave him. I left him alone for 2 weeks. to finish his book. He was just so focused, he didn't even talk to me. His other recent book projects has been involved in European birds for wild guides and birds of the Netherlands and Prachtvogels. And
Very good. Yeah.
I can't pronounce the publishing company, and is co-author of the Pocket Photo Guide to the Butterflies of the Benelux, and that's through KNNV Publishing. And when not birding and creating publications and events, Mark likes to walk the roads to Camino del Santiago in Spain without his binoculars and camera, which I find very hard. I mean, when I first, I mean, we've known each other for a long time, Mark. But when you told me that you did that walk, and I remember you said you just left your binoculars and your camera and you just walked, and you had some of the best birding experiences in many respects, like Dartford warblers practically perching on your head and stuff. I'm thinking, how could you go from photographing all, some of the most rarest birds in the world and seabirds to walking around without your camera? Do you not feel as if you're walking through, like bandit country without a gun or something?
Now I think you get a different kind of arsenal of weaponry, and I think most bird watchers, every bird watcher is a photographer. They shoot images in their mind. That's memories that they shoot. And the more you're busy with technology, the less you see. So sometimes it's good just to leave everything alone and just, and then be, the transparent kid that he used to be. And then, once you see it close, it has much more impact.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think you're right. I don't disagree with you, but I just find, I mean, for example, I broke my camera recently and I feel so powerless. I feel like, I'm going out birding. I feel like I'm a caveman with no instruments. I mean, I've obviously got my binoculars, but of course, when you haven't got a camera, that's when everything suddenly pops up in front of your face. That's when you think to yourself, I hope to God I do not find a rare bird today, because if I do, it's gonna be so difficult for me to prove that I saw it.
Well, the question is, to whom do you have to prove it? Nobody demands from you that you prove it. And, I actually think that you become a better birder if you leave your binoculars alone, because you have to reinvent bird watching for yourself. Because if you're so used to taking your binoculars and you don't have them, then you have to find different kind of means of to identify them. So you get more focused, okay, what it is. You try to get closer, so you get more into, you have to work a little bit more, and you get more focus on sound. So it's different kinds of genes inside you turn on for the identification. So when you're back with binoculars, you have extra weaponry.
I can't argue with you. You're totally right. But I've got a problem in that I'm not competitive at all unless I'm in Extremadura in Spain. When I'm in Extremadura, I suddenly realize that there's an eBird list. I suddenly realize that there's a collation of people like in the top 100. I suddenly realize that I want to be in the top 10. I suddenly realize that if I say I found a yellow-browed warbler, people will be going, are you just saying that because you want to be in the top 10? Where's your proof? And then that's when I need my camera. So maybe what you say applies everywhere in the world apart from Extremadura for me, to be honest, in Spain.
Yeah. Now, the last time that your car broke down, I was there to take you around. So, there's always a solution for every problem.
Anyway, Mark, how are you and where are you right now?
I'm very, very good. At the moment, I'm in the Netherlands, and I am based in Katwijk, which is a small coastal town with a rich history of active birders and bird photographers and rarities. We are home to the second Dorian jackdaw of the Western Palearctic, I think, and Eastern Crown Warbler, and the recent dark-sided flycatcher was found 6 kilometers from my house. So it's a super rich area for birds.
Okay. Well, I want to bring Nils in at this point. Nils, how are you and where are you?
Hi, I'm fine, but I'm at home and I'm just back from Oman, leading a birding tour. So I'm a bit tired at the moment, but I'm fine already.
Okay,
But
and your
so
home is where? Where is your home?
my home is FUC Katwijk. It's just 50 kilometers to the north. It's just also close to the coast, and we have we have more rarities than birders here. So I have
What is,
a lot to do.
let me ask a question now, actually. Why is it? I mean, I look at the rare bird reports and stuff, and I see so
Mm.
many interesting rare birds coming to the Netherlands. Why? Why do you have those birds coming there and not going on to Britain, for example, or elsewhere?
Mm.
Be
Really?
well,
If I see the east coast of Britain and so many rare birds, and we look at the maps and we don't see any rare birds here. So
no, no,
this is
I agree.
quite okay. But
I agree with you, but
sometimes, yes,
you've
of
had some
course.
good birds. You've had some birds that no one else has seen, like the dark-sided.
Yes, okay. That's one of a kind. Yeah,
Why is that? Why is that?
now it's because we are a small country. We have many birders, and that's of course the main issue. You have to have birders to find birds, of course. And the birding community in the Netherlands is very tight, very close, and we have good contacts with each other, and that's why we find a lot of birds, I think.
Okay. I mean, I've spoken to Mark before. He's been on talking about the Dutch version of this book before. So you
Mhm.
can, if you're watching his YouTube, you can look at that as well. But what I want to ask you, Nils, is where did your interest for birding come and when did you start this really finely honed details, looking at details? When did that start?
Um, I start birding around being 10 years old, and then I quit birding somehow when I was 17, I think. I started bike racing and bike racing, sorry. And I knew I have to start birding again after my bike racing career, which was not really a career, but anyway. And then late in the late 20s, I start birding again, more, yeah, during, sorry, for more time. And then I start yeah, to get into the identification of all those stuff.
I
But
think
I was always interested in birds, of course, and especially in bird identification, and especially also in really a rather small part of the world, just Europe and or the Western Palearctic. Don't put me in a forest in Southern America. I really I have to start again.
unless a bird from the Western Palearctic is there.
Sorry?
Unless you see a bird from the Western Palearctic in the
There. Yeah, that's still possible, of course, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you reading the book, I mean, I know people do not really read guides, ID guides.
Mm,
I do.
mm,
They're the only books I read, actually. But when you refer to your ID book, I mean, I looked at it and I couldn't believe some of the things that you pointed out, which I've never really thought about before. There's ID features in there in this book which made me look at birds again. And it's interesting because I think for many years, up until maybe the Collins Guide first came,
mm,
the ID features of birds were just repeated in every book, repeated the same things. And I remember reading about when I was a kid, reading about the golden plover, the Eurasian golden plover. European, is it European or Eurasian? Anyway, and the golden plover in Europe.
mm.
And the books in England used to describe the call as like a boy's whistle. And I'm thinking, what's a boy's whistle?
A boy
But
to a girl, I guess.
but but since the Collins Guide, I've realized that people have become more observant. And one of the fathers of the Collins Guide was a guy called Peter Grant, which I'm
Mm,
sure you may have known.
of
He
course, yes.
died, he died in 1990, and I was very lucky to have him. He was perhaps my only mentor I ever had, and I think, about 18 at the time. And he was telling me things that we now take for granted, but at the time, he was saying to me, "Oh, chiff chaff and willow warbler, the chiff chaff bounces its tail quite a lot." He was telling me basic things like that, and he taught me to be much more observant. And I remember, in my patch in London, in West London, watching and looking out for things like ring ouzel. And, ring ouzel at the time, no one ever normally saw many of them in London. But I realized that by watching the common birds all the time, that's when you find the rare ones, because blackbirds, all the time I'd see them. And I noticed that if I saw a blackbird fly into a bush, and it didn't raise its tail very slowly and back down again, then I need to look again, because I've never seen a ring ouzel do that. And that's how I found many of the ring ouzels that came to my patch, because of that behavior. Yet I've only read it in one book. Maybe I'm not sure if it's in yours actually, but I read it only in one.
Not in mine, not in mine. I've never heard this.
Well, I
So
think the next
thank
edition,
you, David. Thank you.
yeah, the next edition, you should credit me for that. I'll be one of the co-writers.
Sure.
Anyway, listen, I think the best thing now is, maybe, because I know Mark has a presentation about the book. Maybe we should have a look at the presentation, Mark, so we can all understand why this guide is so amazing, and then we can talk after that. How do you feel about that, Mark?
I think it's a very good idea, David. I try to keep it as short as possible so people have some idea.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally beautiful.
Do you see it?
Yep, it's all good.
Okay, thank you all for joining this In Conservation with David, Niels, and myself. Super pleased that you're here, and we're super proud that we could talk about a project that kept us awake for a long time and busy. It's always good to share. So thank you for your time, David, to invite us. Much appreciated. And like I said, Niels is here in the presentation. He's the author of the identification guide, and Niels is very modest, but he's like a walking library of identification knowledge. And before the handbook, he already read several books about identification, and they were mostly like quick reference guides, just with text. He started with the identification guide for Dutch Birding magazine in Dutch. And soon after they were published, I think it was by Bloomsbury, and then with Helm, I think, Niels. In English, first the pocket guide, and then the handbook version of the Western Palearctic, which is like a big volume. And just to give you an idea what you can expect if you buy these books, which I highly recommend. It's just a species with some annotations for which kind of plumage, and then the identification features for the specific plumage of each species. So it's not a very thick book, but it's so dense with knowledge that it's a super rich volume for identification. And myself, I am one of the owners of Agami Photo Agencies, and we are specializing in birds. We are bird watchers, and we are also heavily involved in identification and in the Dutch birding scene. So at one point in our life, Niels and I came together, and we had like this bright idea. Okay, Niels has all this information in his head and in this book, so it's already there. Agami has all the images that we need. So, if we can combine it, we can make a super nice book that is, that really helps birders become better birders. And the other thing was, okay, how hard can it be? And what we had in mind is basically we wanted to have all identifiable plumages. So, most people know that there is an adult and a juvenile bird, but between juvenile and adult, there are usually several stages, depending on the species, of recognizable plumages. Most people know first winter, but, some species has second winter or third winter. And even, for songbirds, there are, you think they're adult, but if you look closely, there's second-year birds because they look a little bit different. The first time I saw collared flycatcher in the Netherlands, a beautiful male. It turned out it was a first summer, and you can, if you know where to look for, you see it because it has brown wings. And what we also had in mind was that instead of the normal identification guide, we wanted to have the ID text next to the image, and also the arrows for exact pinpointing. And one of the ideas is that if you go into the field, that people talk about identification features. If you're not familiar with expressions of tertials, imaginations, primary projections, you're sort of lost. So nobody explains really what is an identification feature, where can you see it on the bird. So this prevents guessing. And another feature that we want to include is that the bird should actually show the feature on the bird. So if we say this is the first summer, we want to have a first summer that actually shows that feature. So if you find a first summer and it was a little bit too early or too late in the season, it was vetoed by Nils. And what we also had envisioned, what you can see on the bottom right, is that we want to show the ID details in detail. So instead of just showing the bird, we enlarge part of the bird just to make sure that what we try to bring over is very you can see on the bird. The other things that we had in mind is that we want to have lots of comparison pages, so that the similar looking birds are besides just a species plate also on a comparison page, so for easy checking the ID features. What you can see on the velvet scoter. When I started bird watching velvet scoters, we knew velvet scoters and we were aware of some Asian and American subspecies. When we thought you can never identify him, and then in the end you can see on the males they're super recognizable, but then the females were impossible. But once you start looking into it, then you see, okay, but there are differences. So it also helps to really show that it's that you can identify him. And the other thing is that we also wanted to have like visual stunning. The idea was to make it like a fairy tale book. You open it and you're sort of like in birding wonderland. So this was we're starting with the team. So the first problem was finding a publisher that gave us the green light for about everything that we wanted. And we found it in Jack Volkers from the KNV publishers. And he was also already, with the idea of doing something with the books of Nils. So he just came at the right moment. And then the final piece of the puzzle was the indispensable designer Sam Goben, who, much of the book is to his credits, and especially in the last months to get it to the publisher during Corona time. You spend overtime, creating and finishing the plates to perfection. So once we had the team, we also envisioned like there should be like a close cooperation with the photographers. Because we had the access to the Agami photographers, we decided just to get them as board as much as possible. So I have been harassing them for many years to get the final gaps. And 3 of the main Agami photographers contributing as Marcus Farasfuo, Daniel Occhiato, and Ralph Martin. And I think with the 3 of them, they have like half of their images are from them. And it's super high quality. They're super talented, and and they take bird photography to perfection. And it really helped together with all the rest of the Agami photographers, to get a book that is, it just pops out of the plates. And for the English versions, the courtesy is to James Lidster, who is an import English birder in the Netherlands, and Vincent van der Spek. And they took up the daunting task to translate 1,000 pages of Dutch dense identification text into readable dense English identification text. And it took also a long time, but as you can see, we finished. To get back to the question, how hard can it be? So our Niels and our original plan, the first time we talked about it on a Dutch Wording Day was, okay, all the ID text is available. Agami, we have all the identification. We have the photos. We want to have like a field guide. 2 years work. So the reality is that Niels wrote all the text, which is about 330,000 plus words from scratch. We found out that half the specific images needed for all the plumages were missing. Instead of a field guide, it became bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it turned out in a handbook of 2 volumes with 1,000 plus pages and 5,500 images. It took us 6+ years to get the Dutch edition, from the first letter that Niels wrote to the printers in 6 years. And then it took like 2 years for the English edition to get translated. So, it's about 3 years ago that I was at your place, David. And then finally, the handbooks are available in English. They are published by Princeton University Press, which is the publisher that we really wanted to. So we're super, pleased and proud that they were the ones who published it. Translation by James and Vincent. And our idea, Niels and I, our idea is that, most books you buy, you put them in the shelves, and that's it. And, our idea is that it's like a cookbook, you have it at your desk, at your, where you sit, and, it's a book to use. It's not a book to, just for the spines in your bookshelves, but it's for daily use, and you can use it when you see something, you want to learn something more, but you can also browse through it, and just enjoy the images. But when you start flicking, you start reading the text, and you can just continue update your own knowledge. So once you open it, it should draw your attention. And how we want to use the book is that we also had an idea is how do you identify birds. You just have like a general idea of a bird, one plumage that you usually see, and you break down in what you can see in the field. So what we did is that we also had like an introduction per family group. So just to give a starting point of for waders, okay, for the waders, these are the plumages or the details that you should focus on for identification, and on this structure, every type of feather is located, because it's sort of like a difference between songbirds and raptors. So if you talk about turtles, you can't use one bird for showing the turtle. You should show it for every family group. And the setup of the species pages, we also had like a structure which I would talk a little bit later. And we also want to have like direct comparison pages, something like that you see in an overview. You can just you can browse through and take and collect all the knowledge of all the species identification in one go. And because Niels was writing and I doing research for 6+ years, there's a lot of new identification features or enhanced, and we show some in this presentation. So this is the introduction per family group. Niels, can you elaborate a little bit about your thought process about this?
Yes, of course. Yes, we just what you said. Every bird family has its own different structure, different places where the feathers are. So we made where necessary an introduction page. Here you see the wheat warblers, and wheat warblers have a different structure than I do know warblers, hippolyte warblers, those species have also an introduction page. And we use it for general aging features. You see that on the ducks. You see the mallards, the adult and the first winter. I think no, rarely birders will look at it, but it's just fun to look at ducks, to age them and to sex them in during the summer, during the eclipse period. So we can learn just from common birds so much, but which we can use, of course, in our general birding at all.
Yeah, maybe as a elaboration is that, for each photograph, we also include the exact month where it was taken. So, because some plumages are really time bound, and especially for, the mollets, if you see on the right-hand side, you see an adult male and the first year male, they look a little bit similar. Everybody just scans through it and just ignore them maybe as juveniles, or just ignore them at all because the ducks. But now you know it, and now you can see it. So the next time you go looking for ducks in autumn, or late summer, you think, oh, is it? Oh, maybe I can see it for myself. So it's it open up your vision even in your own backyard. And one of the comments that we got on a Dutch birding page with a review was that one birder said that he was looking was identifying plumages of magpies in his back garden, and it was no joke because we show you how you can see it, and then people say, oh, I can also see it. So it just opens up your eyes even in your immediate surroundings. And some have like more elaborate introduction sections. Nils is the gulls and the waders.
Yes, of course. Yeah, gulls are a different hobby, I guess, a different job than birding in general. But we try to give the birds, give the gulls a great section, and I think we have succeeded in that. And that's also due to the help of Marc, which is just a gull expert, and he helps a lot of making these pages, I have to say. And also waders, of course, are just the birders birds. Non-birders don't look at waders, but of course birders do, and there are so much to learn in waders, and so much to see, so much different plumages, so much different species. It's always great fun.
Yeah. So the next part is the setup of the species pages. You will ask us about our favorite species, but two of them are already here on this plate. Ross's gull is good for the soul. So most of the species plates they start with an adult bird. That's like the more generic. Every bird kind. The adult bird is most recognizable plumage. But we try to describe, first the common and then the first winter, and then usually it's the less well-known plumages like second year birds, or eclipse, or the little bit more odd species. And the same applies for for the common songbirds. This is interest for you, David. This is also with the Assyricollis subspecies for Iberia. This is the one with a very blue throat. In most field guides, that you just see maybe the white spotted or the red spotted, but in Europe we have orange spotted as well, which is sort of like an in between. And Assyricollis, which is like it's a blue throat, which has really a blue throat.
But orange spotted is not in between. Sorry, Marc.
Okay, what is it? But in between.
Orange spotted is just a white spotted with just an they have not molted their spot feathers again in winter, so they have still winter spot feathers and not summer plumage spot feathers. So
no, it's in between looking, and
in between looking is okay. It's not a different subspecies of not intermediate between white spotted and red spotted. It's just a red spotted. It's just a white spotted blue throat.
Yeah, and one of my other favorite birds is on the right-hand corner, which is a juvenile blue throat. The first time I saw it, I didn't know what I was looking at, when I was 14 or something. But it's, it's such a striking, beautiful bird. And for other pages, the structure is different. So for a species group like seabirds and raptors, we start with the birds in flight, because that's how you see them. With swimming, storm petrel, you hardly see. So we also thought about, okay, that we show the birds in order of how you would see them in the field. Seabirds, obviously, it's in flight. And the same applies for the rarities. Nils, do you want to elaborate on this?
Yeah, there's two rarities indeed. Yes, we have included the rarities of Europe, but not the extreme ones. We had the policy to include the species which are at least 5 times recorded in Europe. So so these two applies to that, and some species I've included which have less records, because I think the identification problem is due to the rarity. I think about pin-tailed snipe. I think pin-tailed snipe is not that rare as we think, because but we don't really recognize them, of course.
Yeah. Dark-sided flycatcher is also in, so
It's
it already helped. We think the Handbook did it. And
Yes.
Another feature of this page is that with extreme vagrants, we start with the first winter birds. You see the first winter
Sure.
double-crested cormorant. I think that all records are first year and maybe going into first summer, or and the other one is like black and white warblers. Most of the birds that you see will be first winter, and then the male and the female, which are different and which you can identify in the field. So for these kind of species, we did it the other way around, just so that this is how you would see them probably in the field. And the other feature that we want to that we incorporate in the book frequently is the quick reference pages, as you can call them, for faster and especially more accurate identification. One of the prime plates is the underwing and the head patterns of the ringtail harriers. So we had to find all the shots of all the specific plumages in the same sort of angle, with the same sort of light, so we could really show the differences. And this is what you can expect in Europe, at any time of the year. And usually they're flybys, but people have now cameras, so if you take a picture, they can zoom in, and then they can just compare us, with the identification, how it works.
And these are all pictures from the field. There's no hand birds. Maybe you think the birds in the hand, but they're all in the field taken.
Yeah. Another favorite plates are the wood warblers. There are many wood warblers. If you have to browse through pages and pages of wood warbler, and look, which is the one that I'm seeing at the moment. All the heads of all the wood warblers and all the wing structures of all the wood warblers. We also combine them in several pages, and these head patterns and wing structures also, they are also depicted on the species places. So these are double entries in the book, and this is just for quick reference. So if you want to see a wood warbler and you want to see the difference between yellow-browed and humes, they're opposite because they look like, and it's you can go to an identification much faster and more accurate, because you just have all the identification features in the palm of your hand, basically. Same for tail patterns. For buntings, it's always it's super important, how the tail pattern is. You usually have fleeting glimpses, But especially now with the help of photography, you can just see how the tail pattern is. And we've tried to find tail patterns of all the buntings, just to be able to show the differences and tell you how you can identify them. And the same for the lesser white-throated taxa. And then if I'm correct, Niels, these are all for DNA tested lesser white-throat.
Yes, that's true, but it's still lesser white-throats are still not solved yet, of course, because we have seen so much variation within same taxa. But this is just the general features and the current knowledge, and I'm sure within 10, 20 years hopefully we solve the problem. But I've said that also 20 years ago, and we're still struggling with them. So it's a very, very difficult species complex, or subspecies, whatever you want.
Yeah. So if we go back to the text, is that if it's not a certain feature, or more like this is the current knowledge, the wording is such that we also state it. Okay,
Sure.
And I think that somebody made a remark about the snowy owls. We have a snowy owl page with all the identification features, but there is overlap. So based on this and this, we think this is a male, this is a female, this is like the general direction of a female. And sometimes a plumage or a gender or a combination of that can't be identified, for certain. And with the wording, we try to match that. This is the gold. So Niels, the floor is yours. So during the writing, because Niels, was looking at so much images also in the GAMI database, and for literature and online, and also how to describe it. That some new things came to light. Niels?
Yes. We know, of course, the white gap above the white above the gap from the semi-palmated plover. And we have talked about we're talking about juveniles and first winters, and also adult winters, and that's quite an obvious feature which is already known for 20 or 30 years. But if you look at the supercilium on the back side of the eye, there's also it's very detailed, but it works in almost all birds. That little dark stripe behind the eye ring is, and then white below it is just almost 100% certain for a semi-palmated plover. And also on the front side there is the dark patch, which is pale in common ringed, is also very good. So it's also in identification you have to look at combinations of features. But if you see this combination with the white above the gape and the dark stripe in the back side of the supercilium, and the dark patch in front of the eye, I don't think there is a the common ring plover that show this combination.
Yeah, CSI birding, but it's it's helpful, and with the modern technology and the number of pictures taken of birds, it becomes obvious. In the Netherlands, there are already, the younger birders checking all the pictures of maybe black-throated loons to see if they can find Pacific loon. It's because it's like a hobby. So probably some young birder will just check all the juvenile common ring plovers on eBird or Observado in the Netherlands just to see if you can find it.
Best to find it in the field, of course.
Yeah.
not from your computer screen.
Yeah.
But anyway.
The Cabotstern, another one?
Yes, it's another one. The known feature is that the Cabotstern, the American sandwich tern, has less white fringes on the inner web of the outer primaries, but they can worn away in sandwich tern. So it's not it's only useful in fresh feathers. But if you look at the underside of the primaries, that's much easier to see. I don't have to describe it, of course, because it's visible here. It's much thicker tips, and also there's some kind of a wedge in it. And this is quite typical for more American terns. We see it in American Royal Tern, and also in elegant tern. So this seems to be a pattern which is quite typical for American terns, the opposite to European terns.
Yeah, that's super nice. Yeah, one of the features that I learned, when I was reading the books, including the places, David, is that the wingtips, the dark patches on the wingtips get more dark when they get bleached or when they get worn. So
in terns it is,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
In many birds. Yeah, in many birds it's the opposite, but in terns it's get darker because there's some kind of coating over the feathers, a pale coating which will worn away, and then the darker parts come more visible. And if you see it, if you look at juvenile girls, they will get paler and paler during bleaching. So it's quite different for the different families. Yeah. Especially terns are outstanding in this compared to all the families.
Another one, the American-Europe connection, Hudsonian versus Eurasian Wimbrel.
Yes, you see the underwing, and the underwing is quite a well-known feature. But if you look at the American one, the Hudsonian, the inner primaries, it's not featured here, but in another picture in the book it is. The inner primaries are well notched, and if you look at the Eurasian, the inner primaries are just a few notches, but only at P1 and 2, and then it's all dark. And you see this in the American one, the primaries are more notched further up in the wing, and that's a new feature, and I think it can be helpful in some cases if you don't see the wing pattern.
The wing structures, one of your favorites?
Yes, no, favorites. I have many favorites, but the longest tertial of Arctic warbler is as long as the secondaries, and sometimes even longer, by which some kind of a corner will create. And if you look at the greenish warbler complex, the longest tertial is slightly shorter than the secondaries, and that gives a more rounded corner there. And it's amazing useful in many birds. If you don't see the head pattern well, then you have a bird in the bush and you have a picture, you have not the head on the picture, but this part of the wing, you can use it. Also, the emergent agents are less in Arctic, and also the undertail coverts are thicker and longer. So you can use this in the field situations, and it's quite a good feature. Yeah. This is also one which is not featured in other guides. Most guides are focusing on the medium coverts. The adult type medium coverts of blights are more blunt tipped, but the funny thing is that the blights pipit does not mold their medium coverts in Europe normally first winters, and Richard pipits does. But if you see Richard or Blights pipit in first winter with all the wing covered still juvenile, that's the first how do you call it? Trigger.
Yeah, the trigger. Yeah, that's
yes. But if you focus on the inner greater coverts, they're also blunt tipped, as you can see, by which the the inner greater covers of the rigid pipet are much more pointed. And this is a very good feature. I found after I found the first wintering blights pipet in the Netherlands, I saw this on the bird I found, and I thought, whoa, yeah, does Richard Pipet have this? And then I sorted it out, and yeah, it seems to be a good feature. I'm quite sure this is a good feature.
Nice. And I think this is the last one that we want to show,
Yeah.
the Atlas Weeder versus Northern Weeder.
Yes, if you see a male, it's quite. You don't need the bill shape, of course, because of the black throat. But there are, of course, female types are very similar. So you can use this. Maybe I'm not sure if it applies for all the individuals. But if you see this type of bill, it's quite a strong feature for Atlas C-bones of Atlas wheat.
Yeah. So it has like a very, odd shaped kind of bill for a Northern
indeed.
Weeder, and
Yes.
once you see it, you can't unsee it. That is so that's that's not also nice of the approach that we did. So just like a quick roundup. So what is next? So the ID Handbook of European Birds will be published in the next weeks and months in Spain via Lynx Nature Books. And in France, it will be published by the Le Show et Nisle and I think it will be published like in 10 days. So it is for Christmas. We are working on other language editions, or other language are looking into it. We're still looking for a German publisher. So if anybody out there, just give us a shout out. And like Nils said, with the work is starting on the remaining bird species of the Western Palearctic, because once you start it, we have to do it. And then we want to include also all the extreme vagrants that we haven't included in the first 2 volumes. And we are thinking about maybe do something else with field guide versions. So it's the box of Pandora has opened. So and there's a lot of things that we can do with it, and help people become better birders. And and that's what we like. Final thanks, of course, to the translators, James and Vincent, and Sam Goben, who also did a lot of work for the English version. Robert Kirk at Caitlin at Princeton University Press. They worked very hard, to help us, guide us through the process and get the books published. And the other guys who were working at the first edition in Dutch. And finally, we want to say, have good birding. And if you buy the handbooks, super thanks, and we hope you just don't put it on your bookshelf, but just at hand.
Guys, for me, this is a mammoth job you've done. For me, the best book of the year, without any doubt. I have it on my desk, as you say, Mark. I refer to it the whole time. And I think it's interesting because, for example, you talk about wheat ears, and this book has made me look at birds even more, even every bird, any bird I look at, I'm looking at it. And I take pictures of birds all the time. That's why I miss my camera now, because I take them, as Neil talks about wing lengths and, tertials and stuff. I take pictures when they turn their backs, or if you just see the tail and the tip of the wing. I take pictures of that as well, because I want to have a collection, so that if I have a species that is a bit, I don't know what it is, then I have all the elements I can put together, or at least send to Nils to put together to tell me what it is. I mean, for example, this year I saw a garden warbler in Spain, in Extremadura, and it was quite late. It was in October. Normally we don't get them coming through later than September. But this bird was very different because it looked a bit grayish. It seemed to have a really strong eye ring. And I thought to myself, that's weird. What is this? And I took pictures of every angle. And then when I looked at your book, I suddenly thought, hang on, could this be an eastern race of the garden warbler? And it gave me confidence to put it into the rarities committee in Extremadura and say, I think this is possibly an eastern bird. Um, and I think it made me look at things even more. So I want to thank you guys for the work you put in to push forward the identification mechanisms for birders. But the question I have, I mean, we haven't got much time left at all now, but the one question I will ask you both is in terms of today's birders, do you think that there are people starting birding who want to understand ID as in the detail that you talked about? Because I know people want to know what they're looking at, but I look at Facebook and I see there's many groups, like for example, the ID for UK birds and European birds, and people are putting up pictures. And I'm often thinking, have you tried to sort of work it out for yourself first? So are you getting a bit lazy just putting it out there to see other people can identify it for you? And also, I've noticed that sometimes when people do identify it, all they say is, yes, it's a wheat ear. Yes, it's this. They don't actually say why it is what it is. And I think for me, that's part of the learning process. But what do you think, guys? Do you think that people are, I suppose, because there's so much information now, people are becoming lazy and relying on other people or, not learning it for themselves? Do you think that's something that's happening?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe yes. When we start birding, there were very little identification guides, so we have to identify our birds ourselves. I can remember my first chiff chaff, and yes, I had a book from the library, and I identified it, and you never forget it. But now the information is so huge, just what you said, and I'm not sure. But of course, there are still birders coming up which do it for themselves and just use the identification literature by that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also we see a lot of birders who start photographing, and photographing seems to be more important than looking at birds. And I think for becoming a good birder, I think that process is maybe yeah, less useful. Maybe I'm not sure. It depends just on the people. And the most important thing is that people enjoyed bird watching. Which way, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think briefly, Mark? What do you think?
No, since I think that people have an opinion about it, if it's good or not, and I think that it doesn't make it doesn't matter. Like Niels said, the more people enjoy, watch, photograph birds, nature, that there is it all helps for conservation. So I think that is the end. So if people enjoy what they are doing, when we start bird watching, like Neil said, you didn't know what it was, you didn't have information, so you had to figure out for yourself. And the older you get, the more information. And now it's the other way around, is that there is so much information that people want to bypass it because they want a quick answer, because that's how the world works. But from that group, there is always a percentage that gets hooked to, okay, but now I want to do it myself, and they find their way back into identification, the way we started. So, and it's the same with photography. People are complaining, they don't have binoculars, but when we were starting a birders, we had the curiosity, and now they have a tool to take pictures, and they get likes, and then they get into bird watching. So the entry point to get into bird watching is different. But in the end, it doesn't matter. It's the more people who watch birds, the more people who want to protect it, the better for conservation.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. I'm going to ask you very quickly, both of you guys, to tell me what your favorite birds are, and if you could be anywhere in the world, where would you be? Starting with you, Mark.
Now, if I had my choice, I would be in Spain, enjoying the good life. And the camera and the binocular is optional. I know some good places to eat and drink some Ribeira de Duero or Rioja, so that's good. And my favorite bird, I don't have a particular favorite bird, but I love seabirds. Put me on a boat and then give me a camera, and I'm happy. And the same applies for the most difficult to see birds on the planet. To do hard work to find empitas or tapaculos or pitas. That those birds make me tick.
Okay. All right. And what about you, Nils? Your favorite bird, and where would you be in the world if you could be anywhere?
I am happy to be home at the moment because I'm just back from leading a tour to Oman. If you see the background of Marc, I will, which is in Oman, of course, the crab lovers and the lesser crested terns. I would like to be in Oman. Oman is my favorite country to birding.
Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, it's the island of Vlieland, of course. And my favorite bird is, I think it's Pallas's warbler. It shows all the nice features of a leaf warbler, all the stripes on the head, on the stripes on the wing, and it's just a small bird which comes from Eastern Asia every year to Western Europe. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. Of course, there are straight birds, although we think so, but they have to go to Southeast Asia, of course. But it's amazing to see them every year in Western Europe.
Oh,
It's just the wonder of bird migration.
yeah, well, it's amazing. I mean, um, I just want to say the ID Handbook of European Birds, both books are superb, and it's a mammoth task you put together. It's amazing information, and I want to congratulate you. And I'm sure everyone here and everyone watching will have to do the same. And you need to go and buy the books because they're absolutely indispensable. Um, so I want to thank both of you guys for sparing your time and sharing your knowledge. I mean, I could sit here for the rest of the week listening to both of you. I am honored to have both of you as friends I can talk to about stuff because, it's just fantastic to have that knowledge. I know that knowledge is out there that we can tap into. So those books are great. Um, just want to say that there are other in conservation whiffs coming up, so please keep an eye on the website, theurbanbirderworld.com. Lots of different subjects. And I'd like to thank the Zoomers tonight as well for coming along. Thank you very much for supporting in conservation with, and also our sponsors. So, as I said, guys, well done. Good luck with the book. And until we meet again, keep looking up.